Lena left the two nurses to do their work with a mention of radioing her if anything changed. They both nodded and patted their radios. She grabbed her radio, attached it to her tack vest, and headed out. It was time for her to change clothes. Lena was no different from the rest and would otherwise have to sleep in the barracks with the other parishioners. Thankfully, she was one of the rare few graced with a hardwall office. She'd modified it to double as a bedroom, and she had a cot stashed in her closet. She walked back to her office in the dark by pure memory, feeling safe in the quiet of their sanctuary. Lena unlocked and went into her security office, closing the door, locking it in the same motion. It was a sturdy door, and she would have no problem at all getting her AK-74 out from the desk drawer and holding it out if the need presented itself. Holding out. The desk was a thick hardwood and reinforced with titanium. Someone had gone a little overboard, so it would protect from earthquakes that were notorious for this reason, and thus the desk was bulletproof even from the highest powered of rifle rounds. She began taking her gear off and put her radio on the charger. It ran from a battery from the wall in case the power cut. Multiple redundancies, just how Lena liked it. The office made her feel safe. She shuddered. Where offices terrified her as a child, she had taken ownership, and the offices now empowered her. Her office, anyway, and she wouldn't go into anyone else's office without full kit. She nodded to herself reassuredly. Okay. In half undressed, she went in the closet of her sanctuary and saw the uniform she was found in. None of it had made any sense before, but one patch stood out suddenly. It was an F-18 flying over the Golden State Bridge with a red, white, and blue background. Lena subconsciously put the jacket on as if it was a routine she had done 1,000 times before. A wave of smells and memories overcame her, and she had to lay down again. She curled up in her quiet closet on her cot that lay concealed under hanging clothes, setting her macro off under her cot and quietly drifting off. Sleepy time. She had joined the military, but which branch? The Air Force? Her family never treated her the same after junior high. Everything since had been a blur. She turned 15 and a half and enlisted. Her grades were off the charts, and she was fast-tracked for flight school. Lena finished high school on base somewhere. She had no clue what strings had been pulled, but it happened, and didn't even pay attention anymore to where they put her. She did her job and did it well. Afghanistan, Syria, Libya, Iraq, and a few nobody knew about. She got good, too good. There hadn't been a real plan other than go as fast as she could for as long as she could. It hadn't taken long for her to climb up to the top and cause a lot of enemies. They tried everything to get rid of her. They had accused her of being a spy, of sleeping her way to the top, and every other horrible thing. She'd been ambushed numerous times in parts of ships and bases nobody could hear. They were never trying to kill her, but it wouldn't have hurt their feelings if they'd broke her bad enough to where she couldn't fly. They all made one mistake, though. She would go into a trance and nearly kill all of them before she could snap herself out of it. With her size, even 3-1 was hardly a fair fight when she got her hands on something. They'd call her a freak and slink off, badly stabbed or beaten by whatever she could get her hands on. There were no qualms about ambushing her in the shower while she was asleep or suiting up. It wasn't until they planted a virus to try to make her sick that alarms finally went off. Lena had never documented the incidents, knowing full well the military record for abuse was a twisted mockery of justice. The others never documented it either, as they would have to explain why they were ambushing the top pilot in their wing. She recalled them starting to send unmanned drones in as air support and having to trust that nothing bad would happen. Unable to make friends or trust anyone, she never had anyone monitoring the drones to make sure she didn't get ambushed in the sky. Lena had to trust, though, that any friendly fire in the sky would get heavily scrutinized and the pieces would come together. So many careers would be ruined that deep somewhere inside her she had to trust that the mutually assured career destruction could save her. Yet there she was in her CEO's office, fidgeting uncomfortably, a pen made out of aircraft aluminum in her hand with a tungsten carbide tip. Lena stared at her CO, not saying a word until a question was asked. There was no emotion in her eyes, no contempt or hate, nothing. She felt dead inside and wanted to get back up in the air for those few moments she could temporarily get away from it all. Drop down and give me 20, the CO said, without hesitation. Lena clipped her pen to the inside of her pocket and did 20 perfect push-ups. She pushed thoughts out of her mind of whether or not the CO was being a pervert. She hopped back up and got back in her chair after counting out the 20. A single bead of sweat came down from her brow, her blonde hair impeccably tied back, tight and braided rose. She looked at him emotionally, not even wondering why she was there. How many times are you going to pass up your next promotion? Her CO asked. Unflinchingly, Lena responded how she had responded so many times before, with a question that was more like a statement. If you make me an officer, you'll take my wings. They both stared at each other, then the CO continued. You could be a teacher at flight school, maybe even be running it if you want. You don't have to keep doing this. He had an almost sadness in his eyes. Lena looked at his desk on the table, and he had a stack of paperwork with her name on it. There were pictures paper-clipped. Multiple girls stabbed and beat up in varying degrees of dress. Some of them in their night clothes, some black-clad, some in towels, and others in ripped flight clothes. Lena felt the overly engineered pen in her pocket and got it back out of her pocket. The CO tensed a bit and then relaxed. I take it this is all your handiwork. He pushed the stack of paperwork forward of the bruised and bleeding bodies of so many groups of girls that had come after her, including a few guys they had duped. She thumbed through them all without an ounce of emotion. One of them she pulled aside, and the rest she pushed away. Whatever you're getting at, I don't remember this one. He took it and put it away. From his looks, she gathered it was some kind of test. Listen, Lena. Jag is getting more than a little pissed. I can't tell if they're madder that it seems like we haven't done anything about the abuse, or that there's no formal suspects. Lena shrugged. The two stared at each other, neither particularly lost in any specific thought, neither willing to back down. There was one more piece of paperwork on the desk that had pictures, looking like some kind of virus outbreak. It said the test was positive for some word that she didn't recognize because it was upside down. Listen, Lena, you're a damn good pilot, the best I've seen in a long time. But you're into some deep crap now. This virus we found, it was inside your flight helmet. Looks like it has a 2% mortality rate. Some serious assassination crap. We barely found it and quarantined it. 2 medical officers and 2 equipment techs are fighting for their lives right now because of this. She swallowed hard. Those sick witches were going to pay. She just didn't know how yet. Are they expected to pull through? She had a deadly look on her face. Yeah, the doc seemed to think so. We had to get them off base, though. They're in some special CDC thing that this country has. I forgot the acronym. It seemed like he was about to say something else when an alarm went off the base. They were under attack and the power got cut. Lena stirred in her cot, rolled over, and pulled the blanket over her. So she's awake now. So then she fell back asleep. It was an earlier time now. She was at a different base. Everything was green. Actually near a base. It was evening and cool. She was cuddled up with a spec ops guy she'd met on a joint op. His would be covering both of them as the temperature dropped slowly with the setting sun. He offered to buy her a beer after she saved him from some hellhole in Africa a few weeks prior. He'd been surrounded with basically no ammo and called in an airstrike right on top of him. She was the only one close. Commander told her no, as usual, but she was trusted with a $100 million airplane by the United States of America taxpayers. She figured they would have wanted her to do the right thing. There'd been so many friendly fire accidents and other technical and mechanical errors over the last 20 years. She would do anything to save even one more person from these psychos. Whether he called in his own coordinates on purpose or on accident, it didn't matter. Not one more headless on parade, she told herself, in her head, with tears in her eyes. Nothing personal, she emotionally spoke out loud as she gave the enemy something to remember her by in her modified trainer, AV-8. Smart missiles launched and took out 4 pickups that were popular with the terrorists in the lead. She banked, spraying gravel and debris on an enemy coming in from either side. gravel traveling at hundreds of miles an hour, perforating them easily and blinding those that weren't hit by the larger gravel bits.